Shalom, shalom. So, as we continue our study on patronage and patron and client relationships, I just wanted to add to it another quick part two to the introduction. So, we're going to be looking at the dictionary of the New Testament background. And as we go forward, we're going to look at patron client scripts, patronage and salvation in the New Testament, and patronage within the new community. But before I read this little introduction right here, I'm also going to recommend Honor and Patronage. If you can get a hold of this book at some point, if you're interested in studying Honor and Patronage, this is by David De Silva. And also, there's a quick blurb in here, the New Testament and Antiquity. So I want to read that real quick. And it's just going to continue to build on what we already looked at in part one of the introduction. So, patrons and clients. Patronage was a central feature of the Roman world. A person would come under the protection and care of a patron, and clients, in turn, would render services for the patron. Clients followed their patrons as they went about their business and supported their cause in public. The number of clients as patron as well as the social status of the clients greatly enhanced the patron's public honor. This is why we had to do patron client first before we did honor and shame. The higher the class of clients, the higher the status of the patron. Patrons offered legal protection to their clients, rewarded them with food and presents, and sometimes invited them to banquets. A patron could, in turn, be a client of a person of higher social status. Higher status clients were sometimes euphemistically called friends, a sense that is behind Yeshua's statement, I no longer call you servants, I have called you friends, John 15:15. The greatest patrons were the emperors themselves, who among their many honorific titles were called benefactor. In the New Testament, Yeshua is sometimes viewed as the one who is the greatest benefactor of all. Acts chapter 10, verse 38. We'll look at those verses real quick. So the first one was John 15:15. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that one laid down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you slaves, for the slave does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you would go and bear fruit, and that your fruit would abide, so that whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he may give to you. This I command you, that you love one another. And the other one was Acts chapter 10 and 38. So I'll pick up at 34. And open his mouth, Peter or Cephas said, I most truly comprehend now that God is not one to show partiality. But in every nation, the one who fears him and does righteousness is welcome to him. As for the word which he sent to the sons of Israel, proclaiming the good news of peace through Yeshua Messiah, he is Lord of all. You yourselves know the thing which happened through all Judea, starting from Galilee after the baptism which John proclaimed. You know of Yeshua of Nazareth, how God anointed him with the Holy Spirit and with power, and how he went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him. And we are witness of all these things he did, in both in the land of the Jews and in Jerusalem. They also put him to death by hanging on a tree. One more. But God raised him up on the third day and granted that he appear not to all people, but to witnesses who were chosen beforehand by God. That is, to us who ate and drank with him after he arose from the dead. Oh, man. So let's go to Dictionary of the New Testament background, and we're going to look at this again, patronage. We've got to drill it in so that we have an understanding, because the further we go, the more and more it's going to start to make sense, especially when we start looking at the verses that go along with it. So the patron-client relationship is the basic building block of Greco-Roman society. Remember, they were functioning in that world. In an economy in which most of the resources are held by a fraction of the population, attaching oneself to a patron would be essential to ensure the well being of oneself and one's family. In a culture in which prestige and honor were highly valued, patrons would be willing to exchange material goods or other assistance for the honor, loyalty, and service that a client would provide. This form of beneficence, can't say it, but y'all can see it, beneficence, I think that's how you say it, which involved mutual loyalty and personal connection, stood alongside the practice of public benefaction, in which giving brought recognition, but did not involve the formation of patron-client bonds. The social institution of patronage becomes relevant for reading the New Testament, since, for example, the language of grace and faith are central terms in both. We'll pick up in I guess this is the introduction, well, part two of the introduction. But we'll pick up in part one, which will be patron client scripts. Shalom, shalom.